Welcome to another episode of the Strong Talk podcast. I am Beck, joined by my guest this week, Dain Wallis of Canada, somewhere up there. Yeah, you're a multiple-time Arnold lightweight strongman competitor. Just we could get right to it and be like, you're like the worst position. I said it. I did an Arnold wrap up, and I was talking about it. I'm like, fifth is almost worse than like 15th.
Dude, you're going to the jugular right away.
It's all I can think about looking at you. But
Yeah.
yeah, we've known each other for a bit, talking here and on. Did you competed in my last Arnold, I believe, right?
Yeah.
2014?
Strongman fitness.
Yeah, that was the last year for the Strongman Fitness. It kind of died with me, I think.
You took it down, buddy.
That's kind of true. In reality, like I was very much in favor of changing that name and had some input
Yeah.
on what should it be called. I'm like, well, it really should be called lightweight. Like we're doing the same things,
Yeah.
but for the people unaware, formerly known as Strongman Fitness, now the lightweight class is a 175-pound class of strongman. The division I competed in, Dain competes in at a good level, and you do it up in Canada where there's I don't think that many people doing it so far. So
Yeah, I mean, well, and that's the thing that's kind of weird about the whole thing for me is like I've been competing in strongman. I mean, I guess I did my first competition when I was 24, like almost a decade ago now. But we never had weight classes in Canada until last year.
right,
So, I mean, when I was younger, like I was always just going up against the big guys and, I just kind of kept doing that and kind of putting myself up on that level. And I guess that's why I progressed to where I did. Whereas nobody else back in the day kind of wanted to do that. So there weren't really any small guys. And now that we're just kind of 2 years into weight classes, like, the weights at 175 or the 200 or 231 class are all quite a bit lighter than the competitions in the US or the competitions that I would see at Worlds.
sure.
There's a really big discrepancy right now between the weights that I would have to use in contest up here, what I have to use in competition down there, and so it's a bit of a tricky thing for training.
Yeah, and it's kind of brand new, and that, I feel the same way as far as my own training when because competing up a couple weight classes or even just open division for so long, you kind of have to, even being a lighter guy, you have to adapt to that then it's like, oh, now this makes sense. I'm running with a 600-ish pound yoke. That's probably what I should have been this whole time, not trying 7 or 750. And eventually I think the 80 kilo class will keep going up that range, but there is something to be said for competing up weight classes to get prepared to be the best at a lighter one.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah, no, and that's what's inevitably going to happen with me this summer again, just because there's not a lot of guys competing in my weight class period. So I'm going to show up at some regional qualifiers where I will be the only 175 athlete. So I'll get the points for that class, and then I'll just compete up at middleweight or something just to, practice the weights I need to handle in big competitions.
Sure. And I've always said too is that I feel like if you want to be like one of the best in the world, like at an international level, you pretty much need to be at least top 3 at a local regional level, 1 to 2 weight classes up.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but it's just people don't always look at it that way, but it's a smart way, it's a smart way to look at it, and I'm saying that because I said it, so that's a little much. But enough about me. So let's get into more about Dain.
Sure.
Like you said, you've been competing in strongman for about 10 years. Found the sport much, and then you look, and then you have some good before photos as well. Now you're all ripped and lean and 175. So you're competing in the sport, doing the weight class, and then you want to do like the Arnold, like the first Arnold's, like 2014, kind of when it was coming into it. I think you got back into the sport. So how did you how did you like restructure your diet to drop that weight, still keep your strength, be competitive, and ultimately be up there in the top 5 or so 175s in the world?
Yeah, and that's where like my road in strongman is super weird, way different than anyone else's probably. I mean, I never even hit a gym until I was 20. And I was 130 pounds dripping wet, like just not a big man. And to just kind of started lifting heavy right away when I started hitting the gym, just because the friends that I had, they got me into it, and they happened to compete in strongman. So they're like, hey, you should come play with the toys after, a year of barbell work. I'm like, yeah, sure, why not, right? So I had maybe 2 or 3 years right at the beginning where it was just eat everything, lift as heavy as you can, don't really give any cares for your body or whatever, like just have at it in my early 20s. And I got up to like 200 pounds and pretty strong pretty quick, but wasn't exactly lean, as you would say.
Yeah.
So I kind of pulled back from there and just kind of took a step away from the sport. I actually moved overseas for a couple of years and lived in Belgium, just a job opportunity I had over there. I trained with Belgium's strongest man when I was over there. It was a big guy, Jimmy Lauries. He's a giant man. So I was still dabbling with strongman, not competing. And then came back, same deal, did a powerlifting meet. I tuned up my nutrition because I really kind of found a passion for that when I got back from overseas. And just I got my CSCS and got my nutrition coaching certifications and really dove into it head first to kind of start my career in that field. And that's when I kind of dropped the weight, and then I randomly did a strongman competition again in 2013, and it was up against all these big guys, and there was a guy in the crowd who pulled me aside and he was like, who are you and why are you not down in the US? Because you need to be down there competing. So I did that, and honestly just sent an email to Dion after that, and she wanted a Canadian at Strongman Fitness, so there's my invite.
Yeah, it helps to get people from outside the United States to make like a world championship a world championship.
Yeah, exactly right.
So yeah, that's perfect. But yeah. So what kind of time frame was that? Like when you're just eating everything in sight? That kind of like what years were those?
Man, those years were, I guess it would have started when I was like 2021, so roughly 2000 and let's say 2005.
Okay.
And then until about 2010, it was even into when I was in Belgium, and I was just like, man, there's waffles over there, there's beer, there's chocolate, like just getting into it. And then by the time I was like a year and a half into that stay over there, I'm like, okay, so I'm fat. This is the thing that needs to change. So then I just kind of, tuned up the nutrition, and story goes from there.
Yeah, but it seems like it's improved a bit, but not completely, because I think that's roughly around the same. Like, I think we're about the same age, and we're probably influenced by the same kind of. And that was kind of like the mentality with you're getting serious in strength sports is like everyone's just like eat as much as you possibly can, get as big as you can, and it not really the reality. You didn't take into account the what else went into the kind of people that are doing that, that having that kind of lifestyle, and that they're probably not also the kind of person who's not, they're, if you're 6'4" and you have this giant frame to fill out, that can work, that's before it starts just pillowing out more like you're myself. But yeah, I did the same thing. I got like up to like 208 pounds, and it's like, yeah, I've got my deadlift up to, in the 500s and stuff like that, and relatively strong guy, but not like, I don't think anyone's be like, oh, that, you're not exactly an athlete, maybe a strength athlete, but no one knows what that was, in the mid 2000s. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. I think overall, that's getting better as far as, there's more resources than there was back then, but that was the whole thing. Everyone was just like, just drink a gallon of milk, do your squats, and somehow you're just gonna be this giant jack dude. Like there's a couple things missing in there.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to imagine back then too. Like I said, like my buddies who were competing in strongman, and there weren't weight classes. So
sure,
of course, the advice they're gonna give me is you better eat.
Sure.
If you want to compete, you better get big. So that was the goal then. But then, you start getting hurt, and you don't feel great, and you don't look very good. You're gonna start questioning those decisions.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's a better, just other than just lift everything heavy in sight and eat everything in sight. There's a little bit smarter way you can go about it to enjoy it and balance your life a little bit more. So
yeah.
How you say you got some nutrition certifications, etc. We talked about sending you some clients through starting Strongman as well. So like, what is your process? Let's say even for yourself when you started, how did it start? And I'm sure that's similar to how you apply to help someone kind of clean things up and improve their performance and overall health as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, over the years, I mean, my approach has changed a lot, and like it continues to evolve. You know, you work with more people, you see, what works, and you just have to keep learning and evolving, right? But I mean, even back in the day, like as simplistic as it was, it's just okay. How much am I eating now? How much, protein should I eat in a day? And then calorically, just make sure I'm not eating too much. Like I was just very simple. It was like, all right, I'm going to strip out some carbs and some fats, make sure my protein's still a body weight, and just keep on seeing if I can keep lifting the same weight, basically. That was the goal. It was like, if I can maintain my strength and lose some weight, then I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job here.
Sure.
So did that, and over the course of, it was really like 3 or 4 months, I really just kind of put myself in a caloric deficit with high protein and just kind of ripped into it and lost like 15, 20 pounds pretty quick right off the bat and maintained my strength. And then that kind of put me in a place where then I was lean enough to just be like, all right, now I can be out of maintenance and then try and get stronger and kind of just shimmy back and forth there by increasing calories through some phases and taking them away at some phases, and just kind of like, along with my training, just undulating, calories along with intensity and volume. So that's just kind of what I did back then, and it's evolved a lot since then. But that's generally how I would work with people too, is you have to figure out where someone's at before you can actually make a recommendation regarding their food intake or what they eat, right? And so when I start working with someone, that's always the biggest thing. It's like, I need to know how much food you put in your body now so that we can actually figure out, do you need more? Do you need less? Do you need more of something specific? And then you can kind of build that platform from there, right?
Yeah, so you're saying if someone's, eating 5,000 calories, automatically dropping that to like 2,500 might not be the best way to go.
Yeah, well, they'd probably lose weight pretty quick.
Yeah, maybe not sustainable, and their strength might suffer because it's such a big shock. But yeah, just making small little changes as you go, and tweaking things to see what works. And man, that's the thing. Like I'm sure you get it too, but like people just ask you like, what do you recommend for diet? Mm-hmm. And I always say, well, what are you doing right now? And you say like, I just tell people, not that I know as much about it as you, but you just ask someone to say like, you tell someone, track what you do for the next week. And you're pretty much out of the conversation when you do that, because they're not going to do that for 90% of the time. So then my approach to nutrition is how to get people to ask me less nutrition questions. So it's a little different than being a nutritionist like yourself. So I'm sure you have a different approach. But if you want, if you're like me and you want people to just stop asking you those questions, then just ask someone to track something for a week. It generally helps.
Yeah, and that's always funny when people do, if they want to come to me for nutrition. I'll tell them up front, like, that's the one thing. You have to track things meticulously for me for a week. If somebody can do that, I know they're serious about actually wanting to take control of their nutrition. If they're not going to be a good client anyways, right? Like, they have to understand 100%. That it's not a matter of just saying, eat less of this or eat more of this. It's like you have to have a plan, and that's the one thing I say people probably make the biggest mistake is, if they know they want to cut down to another weight class or something like that, they'll do what you just said, and they won't calculate where they're at. They'll just say, oh, I read somewhere I should be at 1,800 calories. Sure. So then they'll calculate what that is, and they'll just go to that, and they'll lose a bunch of weight right away, and then they'll be stuck because there's nowhere to go. Yeah. The body is extremely smart and does not want to lose weight. Like, the body loves maintenance. It loves being at homeostasis. So if you just like slash calories, yeah, you'll get some early results, but it's about it. And then you're in trouble.
So don't go into MyFitnessPal, say you weigh 200 pounds right now. In 12 weeks, you want to weigh 170 and go off of what it recommends and the macros you do.
Believe it or not, the algorithm that they use isn't really accurate.
Interesting. So something that's free and really accessible might not be always the best source of that. So, well,
it's crazy that you can't just do A plus B equals C in the human body. Yeah. Like it's weird that the body's not just a simple abacus. That would make things really easy if it was.
Right. It's kind of the same thing like when people go off BMI or something. It's like someone who's 180 pounds is going to be very different than someone else's 180 pounds.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you do that. I know I think, is it a misconception that you're kind of, I don't think you're a carb-free guy, but I think it's more like what carb backloading, for lack of a better word. Is that am I off here on what?
Yeah, see, and that's what I've always found that really amusing is that I've had multiple people at competitions like ask me how I compete in strongman without any carbs.
Right. Okay.
And like I have like maybe in like in certain phases where I was really like I want to see if I can really lean down, I would super cut carbs down low.
Mm-hmm.
But that would never be in like a high training period or like strongman competition period, because that is crazy. Like if anything, I'm a high carb guy.
Sure.
But carb backloading is something that I used. It's just an ebook by John Kiefer that I found, and it's basically just a really easy method to just kind of like keep your calories low, because the principle of the diet basically is like you only eat carbs at night. So like during the day, you're cutting out all these calories, yet they're from carbs. It doesn't matter where you're getting them from. You're just controlling calories throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then you eat a bit more later, which always coincided with right after my training. So if you train in the late afternoon, it's a great way to do it, because if you want to get lean, of course. So it's not like an earth shattering. I know there's all this crap there about the insulin hypothesis and all this other stuff out there. Calories are 90% of the battle. So
yeah.
It's just a really clever way to do that.
Yeah, pretty much almost all of those diets work, because if you're limiting to any extent, most people are just consuming whatever mixture of things they like
Mm-hmm.
throughout all the time. So if you're going to do anything where you're taking one of the three, macronutrients and limit it to some extent, you're probably going to go in a deficit.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like carbs are a really good thing to target if you're somebody who's really overweight. Just because if you're obese or super overweight, then you have insulin dysfunction. Like your cells are just saturated with insulin all the time, so they just don't respond to it. So if you take away carbs, which generally do, elicit a really big insulin response. I know protein does as well, blah, blah, blah. But carbs in general, they really do give a big response. If you take those out of the diet, the literature is pretty clear that for obese populations, that's a really good way to get healthier. They improve your blood markers and lose weight. But for populations like athletes who have healthy insulin sensitivity, I mean, carbs are protein, carbs are fat. It's food, So there's really no big shift there if you're lean and healthy.
Yeah, because you can actually process them and you're using them.
Your body responds like it should.
So nothing's evil.
Yeah, that's just it, right? I mean, there's all these camps, right? And I was definitely like the carb backloading camp for a while. And I mean, it is a method you can use that will work if I still use a lot of the protocols. It just fits for kind of how I live my life. But that's the big thing with everyone is you have to find a diet that's going to fit your lifestyle. If you heard that diet, X is amazing and it worked for your friend. Well, if you live differently than your friend, it might not work great for your lifestyle. You have to find that balance, because the best diet is the one you can actually stick to.
Exactly. Yeah. The one you can actually adhere to is going to work.
Yeah.
Something could be perfect in a vacuum but if you don't actually do it, then.
Yeah, exactly. There's no magic diet out there. You hear all this stuff out there about keto or all this other stuff out there, and it's like there's no magic diet, folks. Like different things can work and different people respond to different things, but there's a ton of approaches, and again, it all starts with calories.
Yep. Awesome. And something that you said that I find interesting, which I want to touch on there, is that you said you were like you're undulating your training with your diet. So what you're saying is you're not just training heavy strongman stuff year round, pounding your body, and then you're doing different phases where you're going to go through like, okay, I'm prepping for the Arnold this next 12 weeks. In between now I'm doing something else. So instead of just the same basic heavy, everything heavy all the time, events. So you're structuring your training to do different things in your diet along there. So like, let's talk about like your general approach to your thoughts on training. I know I see, you had some injuries you came back from, and you're putting all these like animal flow videos on Instagram. It's where you're just moving around doing all this stuff, which I don't think 99% of strongmen can even do that. Just let alone just have their shirt off and look so good. But just moving around, yeah, whatever you're doing, just. But so let's talk about how some of your approaches are and just putting your training in different phases and
Yeah. Well,
different emphasis.
and this is admittedly something that for me has changed a lot over the past 2 years since I did bust up my knee. And it was simply because I had to, my knee was all messed up. If I didn't change my patterns, regardless of having my knee fixed, if I didn't change the patterns that caused the problem was going to come back. So, before I did get hurt, I was more or less always kind of training heavy, in some way, shape, or form. Volume might have been higher or lower, but there was always either heavy squats or deadlifts or events or something in that plan. So I kind of beat myself up pretty bad. And, as most strongman do, like, you got little nicks and bumps and bruises, whatever, but my T-spine mobility, like my upper back mobility was super, super crappy. My hips were all locked up because I was sitting a lot, and my knee was bad, I guess, probably because of my hips and my crappy squat pattern. So that's how I tore that tendon in my knee. And then when I got that fixed, I basically got a coach, and I'm like, all right, so she was a movement coach, and she kind of assessed me, and she's like, okay. So, she told me all these things about my spine and my shoulders and my hips and all that, and suggested animal flow was one of the things that while I was rehabbing from my knee that I do. And my surgeon, he, said the same thing. He's like, yeah, that kind of, movement is good for the body. So I just started doing a lot more body weight movement, and animal flow is fantastic, but there's a lot of body weight movement protocols out of there. The point is just basically to like get you out of the crappy patterns that you're always in. So, slumped shoulders and hips kind of locked in flexion and all that kind of stuff. It's just opening up all your chains. So just kind of started doing a lot of that, and yeah, it made my knee a lot better, and my T-spine mobility's gotten a lot better. I'm not nearly as banged up. I've had a little bit of I'm still dealing with some stuff from my T-spine that's kind of flowing down into my arm, and it's kind of inhibited my training over the winter. But other than that, like, my knee's awesome, and my strength is pretty much back to where it was, even though I still haven't squatted in 2 years since I busted up the knee. It just hasn't been a priority.
Yeah, the risk versus the reward with that too. Like,
and that's just it, right? It was like I had to fix that pattern, and it was just the timing of everything. So once I finally got the green light so I got the knee fixed in October of 2015. So it wasn't until like early in 2016 that I could start lifting, weights at a decent level. And then I had my first competition in May. And so I was just kind of like trying to get up to the level where I could do a strongman competition again. So That was about 8 months past. And so I was lucky that in Canada, the weights are a lot lighter. So I was pretty fortunate in that respect that I could kind of ease my way back in at a good weight. And then my training kind of took over, like going for provincials and Canadians even here is a lot lighter than down in the US. And so I was really training more like speed and muscular endurance and all that kind of stuff with my events, not really pressing for like max strength. And then once Canadians were done, then it was like, all right, now I have 4 months to actually get strong and be good at the events for the Arnold. So throughout that entire period of time, it's just I had all these different priorities, and it's like squats just kind of never found their way back into that. So I'm actually super excited that I'm actually working some double kettlebell squats now, getting that pattern back up. So hopefully I'll be able to, develop some leg drive and put some actual weight back on, because it's been quite hard to stay over 175 if you're not squatting and can't really do any strict pressing. It takes a lot of muscle off your body.
Just having a hard time staying over 175. That sounds nice right there. I feel like I've been trying to get back down to 175 for like 2 years, but
yeah, it was super nice until you get up to Worlds, and like all the guys you're competing against are friggin' 200 pounds coming in, sure. Bastard.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But I think it's important to note that when you do get an actual injury and your body keeps dysfunctioning, that and then everything kind of works in like a chain like that. Like you're saying, this probably caused this, which then caused this, and then you have to go back and find what's actually causing this. It's not like,
and that's
yeah,
yeah. I was gonna say, and that's where I think a lot of people kind of make the mistake, right? They have an injury and they rehab the injury and they do all the things right for the injury, but then they go right back to what they were doing. And if you don't fix that underlying problem, I mean, you're just going to keep re-aggravating whatever you messed up. And so I think a lot of athletes, you have to remember that like every muscle in the body is attached by fascia. Like everything is connected. And there are cross body patterns in the body. Like if there's something wrong with your right shoulder, your left hip's probably going to have an issue and vice versa. Like there's a lot of moving pieces in the body. And if you have a knee problem, don't just look at your knee. Look at your ankle mobility. Look up at your hip. Like, look up and down the chains to see where that dysfunction might be and tackle that. Because especially in the strongman community, I know a lot of people kind of get into it and they don't really have the proficiency in a lot of the basic movement patterns that they need to really load up the weight the way they do. So you can see athletes getting in trouble that way. So it's really important to have an understanding at least of how the human body works and where to kind of target when you do have little nicks and bruises and stuff so that you don't have a full-blown injury.
Yeah, when you say that they don't have the proficiency in those movements, I think one of the things, like, since strongman's loaded for you, you kind of have to, like, it's like sink or swim. So is that what you're saying? Like you're just put under a load that maybe once you advance, like then you go to nationals and it goes up. Like if you choose to do that, you didn't work up in like a progressive way. It's just like, okay, in 12 weeks, I have to do this. Or
yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah, there's a lot of that, but it's also, a lot of lifters, and I was totally in the same boat. Like I just started lifting. Nobody taught me the basics of how to breathe properly, which is a friggin' insanely important thing if you're in strongman.
Everything.
Like you need to know how to breathe and brace. If you don't, you are screwed.
Yeah. So, I get all these, form checks or new client intakes or, and I'm sure you do too. And when someone sends you their first sets of deadlifts, what's pretty much, what do you reply like every time when you get like, here's like your first week of deadlifts or like an assessment? It's like, okay, here's how to breathe and brace. I feel like I should almost send it out to people like right when they sign up, like a little like whole, bunch of literature to study up on that. Just every time.
Yeah, it's that. And even, I mean, man, you see that with squatting, you see it with pressing. It's that first function, right? Like in order to develop strength and power, like you have to have tension within your body. If you don't have that solid brace, and again, that's where people are like, if they have trouble with breathe, if they don't know the basics of breathing or bracing, then they're like, oh, I'm going to get a new weight belt because that makes bracing a whole lot easier. And then they just start using the weight belt for everything when they don't actually have the basics to like develop that, core strength that they need.
Sure. So I think that's one of the things where like training in a belt gets a bad rap because people say like, oh, you should do all this beltless training. So you get, it's when you use it as a crutch instead of a tool. If you want to sum it up.
There's a lot of things that you can use for a crutch, right? I mean, we see weight belts as a big thing, but and it's all, I find that discussion really, really interesting when it's, how often to use a weight belt, like when to use it, when not to use it, and like there's no right answer, and every athlete's different. So
I wake up with mine personally, so.
Oh, I definitely cuddle with mine. I don't wear it. It's it digs into my skin if I do, but it's always there just in case.
Yeah, I feel like after the hernia surgery, it just feels really weird to load anything up heavy without like having something to push out against.
Yeah, with the hernia, I can understand that.
Yeah, that's different.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah, that's when we talk into like specific, like that's getting specific. But generally, I think, it's good to get. It's that whole risk versus reward thing again.
Mm-hmm.
Is it better to do a little bit more loading beltless? Yeah, maybe, but I really just don't want to tear that mesh. So.
Yeah, again, like it's one of those. It's really one of those things. Like there's some clients who I see their movement patterns and I see their breathing patterns and I see their goals and I encourage them to use it more. Whereas there's some where I'm like, you need to pump the brakes and park that for this phase so you can actually feel the pattern and like learn how to breathe and do it all yourself. So yeah, it's it's always going to be around, and again, it's very individualistic.
Sure, that's a good topic right there. Is when a client has goals that exceed that, if you like, because people hire you because they have an expectation that they want to achieve X. And it's really hard to tell someone, well, maybe you could do this, but first we need to spend 6-12 weeks fixing this instead of doing this goal at the end of 12 weeks. How do you approach that conversation? Because I have to do it a lot, and it's not fun. You don't want to ever tell someone like, hey, like, you're the fairy tale scenario where you spend 12 weeks and you get ready for the show, and then you show up, then you win your pro card. Like, it can happen, but it's probably, you got to do. But man, it is really satisfying when you do have that one person that listens. Then after that, it all starts to click. So how do you get them past that initial hump of trusting this process and you maybe delaying what their end goal is?
Yeah, and again, it's all case by case, right? Like if it's a super extreme scenario where it's really out of reach and like they're really hoping for something that's really not going to happen. I mean, I'm not going to, I'm not going to be a coach for someone. I'm not going to coach them into danger. I'm not going to coach them into a situation where they could possibly hurt themselves. And I'll tell them that. I'll say, this is actually how I feel about this. I think that if we try and go down this road, you will probably get hurt. And I'm not cool with that. And I say, this, and this are your priorities. If you do these things, then this is a possibility. But until you do these things, this is not going to be a possibility. I just try and be as realistic with them as possible. If there's possibilities, I tell them. It's like, yeah, this could happen if you do X, Y, Z. And if you're dedicated and you do that, perfect. But I'm always putting in things like you can do it in both ways too, where you can see that a client, maybe they have a really hard time bracing and breathing and they're lacking kind of that fundamental piece, but they're super dysfunctionally strong, and then so you just, I would program little things in there to like dead bug, like just little like activations to get them into their glutes more. Like there's just little things that you can put in like movement prep before they lift and say, hey man, you can do all these things and you can enter that competition and you can win, but you have daily homework that you have to do to kind of patch up this underlying problem. And you can kind of do some things simultaneously. And I try and do that with a lot of clients as well, but I make it blatantly clear. It's like, you can't be skipping this homework to do the big work because that will lead you down the wrong path. So it's just, again, I'm super transparent with my clients. I've lost clients because of that.
Yep.
And that's totally cool because, again, like I said, I'm not going to be the guy sitting there saying, oh, shouldn't have done that. Now you're injured. Shoot.
Yeah, you never want to get someone injured. And, with coaching, especially, we're talking, you help people in person as well, but doing remotely, there's only you can't be there to be like, tell someone to stop in the moment. So
yeah, it's so hard.
You almost have to be a little bit more cautious, in my opinion, as far as that. Because you can't be like, okay, that deadlift was good, but not this, like you're not going to stop them. It's more just, you're kind of giving people a guideline more than anything. So
yeah, clients, I mean, it's the client, lifter relationship, right? It's like, here's what I've told you. Here's what I've programmed for you. Here's what I've told you are the major priorities. And you have two options. You can do the work and you can go and get the results that you're looking for, or you can bypass it and let's see where that takes you. Maybe I'll be wrong, but
I am wrong sometimes. I'll have to admit, like,
really?
Oh yeah, all the time. Especially with clients, like you have some where they're like, oh, I want to do this. And you're like, whew, I don't know. But then, man, it's weird. They're like, if you ever have clients, like some people are just competitors. Their training does not reflect how they compete. And you go, how? Like,
yeah,
how did this happen? Like, there's like a deadlift medley, and like the first one's past your max, and then you got all four. Like, but there's just some people like that, and again, when doing it remotely, it's harder to tell. Like, you can see that person, like in the gym, I think a little easier. But hey, so. But we're talking generalities you have to go off of, and then you deviate from there. Is kind of my approach with that stuff. So getting into your own training again, like you're coming back from injury, I think it's because unfortunately pretty much every strongman I think can relate to having an injury, feeling devastated, going, crap, what do I do now? This is 6 months where I'm not going to be able to deadlift, 500 pounds again or whatever it may be. So I think it's important to note what you did is you went back, you looked, you said, what can I do right now?
Mm-hmm.
And fix those things, even if it doesn't seem like the fun big things that are going to help. They set you up so then when you are ready, you're ready for success. So how do you mentally deal with that? And then once you hadn't, you had a body dysfunction injury, and then you get back into training, how do you like mentally prepare yourself that you're, it's not going to happen again, and you're setting yourself up that you're okay, I'm getting under a 600-pound yoke again, I hope my knee feels, we all have these thoughts. So
Yeah, and
how
I honestly will say that I think the number one thing is having a competent coach. Because if I didn't have that second pair of eyes and that advice coming at me, anytime I did my side step downs or like my split squats or whatever the rehab things that I was doing, if I didn't have somebody there to look at my videos when I sent them and to just tell me, like, ask me what I'm feeling and to see where things were at, like, it would have been super, super hard because I would have been doubting myself. I would have been like, is that good pain? Is it a bad pain? So one thing is just having a competent coach is so important. And like, coaches need coaches. Like I'd be nowhere without my coaches. Right. So it's, that was probably the biggest thing. And for me, it was, again, the road with the injury was a little different because I knew I was hurt. Like I knew something was wrong with my knee when I was competing at the Arnold, not last year because I couldn't be there, but the year before, so 2015. Right. So I competed there, and I knew something was wrong, but I wanted to re-qualify for the Arnold, and then I'm like, then I'll get it taken care of. That was the mindset. It's like, it's probably just tendinosis or something. I'll deal with it later. So I competed on it 3 times, and then when I won the Platinum Plus competition, like after the Arnolds and qualified for the next year, I was like, all right, got 10 months. This is going to be perfect. I'm going to get it taken care of. And then, of course, the first approach that I took, which was PRP, did not work. So I wasted about 3-4 months kind of waiting to get that and then getting it. And then that didn't work. So it was like a summer of kind of messing around, lost a lot of time. And then I did finally get the stem cells in there to kind of fix it up. And then I still, even the day I got it done, I asked him, I'm like, look, Worlds is in 4 months. Am I going to be good? He's like, yeah, you could probably be fine. Don't worry about it. And then I still remember going in January being like, dude, just be honest with me. Am I being stupid by trying to get into Worlds on this? And he was like, oh yeah, you're definitely going to hurt it. I'm like, okay, perfect. You could have told me that back in October and I could have started dealing with this differently then. But mentally, I kind of always thought I was going to get it done in time. So it wasn't as hard for somebody who had an acute injury and it was kind of didn't know the path. But then when I finally realized in January that I wasn't going to Worlds, then it was like, oh, okay, this sucks. Now what? And then I was like, all right, well, let's focus on what you can do, and started focusing on, like I said, getting strong in my split squats and, getting back to deadlifting and, kind of getting my base patterns back up. So it was a bit of a weird time for me. But again, then just having a coach and then focusing on the little wins. It's like, oh, I don't have pain when I do this anymore. It's like, oh, I deadlifted 225 again. Amazing. It's the little milestones where you have to understand, they weren't big lifts to me in the past, but now I can do them and I'm pain-free. Awesome. So as long as you're focusing on the things you can do and you know that all the things you're working on are geared towards fixing the problem that caused the injury in the first place, you have this sensation that even though you're not moving big weights, you're doing very productive things. And that was kind of just the focus that I always had. It was really hard to hold back a lot of times because I felt fine and coach was like, don't do it. Nope, not yet. And I'm like, I just wanted to get in there, but I was super cautious after not going to Worlds and kind of eased my way back into things. So I'm fully 100% confident that, like I said, at first the doctor was like, yeah, you compete at Worlds. And then when I didn't, then I'm like, okay, I'm definitely not rushing. I feel mentally good about this. I'm not going to hurt it again. Just go with the program, man. So.
Yeah, that probably all worked out for the best. I remember, I had a similar when I had hernia surgery before I did the first Arnold in 2013, or my first Arnold, the first, Strongman Fitness Arnold, and that was 15 weeks before. the Arnold? And the doctor's like, it was the same kind of thing. Like, you think I'll be ready? He's like, yeah. Like, all right, I'm just going to go off that. And was I really? Probably not. But hey, it all worked out. That having, I think just having that belief that it's going to work out is important. And then,
Oh yeah.
if you don't, it's definitely not. But then you go, let's go into when you actually start getting into some of the heavier weights, and you're like, okay, like you said, I have 4 months now I did this lighter show. I have 4 months to, like, what were the weights at the Arnold? Like 500 something pound deadlift.
Yeah.
200, you have like the keg is like what, 220, 250 pounds or something.
Yeah.
You got to clean it and press it. So like, we're talking serious weights for, 175. I mean, it's the Arnold, it's the world championships. It's a whole different thing than a local show, like you're saying. How does that 12, 16 week prep go? How do you approach that working up to it with that much time off?
And that's the thing. Like, I look back at my training over those 4 months, and I mean, it was like a cheater training approach as far as I kind of look at it now. It's because, again, like, there's no squatting involved. I deadlifted from the ground very, very little. Right when I started getting an elbow problem. I still don't know what it is. It's coming. There's something, it's a tension issue. I don't know. It's just, there's a tendon in my elbow that keeps snapping over the medial epicondyle. So it's just super painful. And of course, if it wears and tears too much, snapping over that, it's going to tear.
Sure.
So it's something I've really had to manage. So I was doing a lot of movements that would mimic what I was doing at the Arnold. So I was doing a lot of event work, a lot of like technical stuff with the keg, because I really didn't know how to press a keg properly. I was doing a lot of 13-inch axle deadlifts. I was doing a lot of clean and jerks with the barbell, with the axle. I was running yoke a lot, and then doing just the same stuff I was doing to just ensure the health of my knee and work on my patterns. It was like I was trying to get strong enough for the Arnold, but in the patterns that I was using at the Arnold. Okay, it wasn't like I wasn't squatting or deadlifting. It was like just saying, okay, that's the event. My axle deadlift's gonna be great. I think in October when I started, or November when I started, like my first week of programming with axle deadlift, I was doing like 380 or something, and like I hadn't deadlifted over 450 pounds or anything before that, like since my knee injury. So like I was really starting at like low weights and like drilling the patterns and getting my body adjusted to it, and then just kind of like slowly ramping up the weights as I kind of went along. And hey man, it worked out. I mean, like I was physically there. Like I physically had the strength to do everything I needed to win that competition. Just made one little mental error, and hey, that's what it takes of the worlds, right?
It's all the difference in the world, really.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much, you're just training very specifically because you don't have a lot of time. You're not like building like, oh, I want to build like the prototypical like good strongman athlete that can be good at all these things. You're like, I have 4 things I need to be good at.
Basically, yeah.
If I try to worry about getting good at 20 things in this time, I'm not going to be good at those 4 things.
Yeah, exactly. So to be very honest with you, by the time the Arnold rolled around, I was just so sick of training. Like I was just axle all the time with the axle and like stone, and it's just like I'm done with this. I want to squat and I want to deadlift from the ground, and I just want to have fun.
Sure. So let's go into the events. You get out there, you're back. That has to feel good.
Oh, it's great.
You do it's a very new event, that keg, carry, and press, and then carry, then press.
Yeah.
You get that done. How's that first event going? Then how do you feel after you're like, all right, I'm back. Was able to complete it.
Yeah, well, I was stoked. I mean, going into the Arnold, I had the mindset of like the keg event was going to make or break who makes day 2. I'm like, if you score points on the keg, you have a chance. If you do not score points on the keg, you're done. Like and that sucks because it's the first event, So for me, it was like, and the goal was to get at least 3 I thought that five would probably win. And in training, I got 3. So I was like pretty stoked in my training, got 3. And then on competition day, you know, adrenaline's pumping, and I got 5, and I was fired up, you know, good enough for first place, like first event I've ever won or tied for the first at the event. So pretty jacked up after that event to say, all right, I'm here, I'm back. I do have it. I got everything I need, like confidence through the roof, but like too far for it through the roof.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than that. Yeah, you come back, an event you're worried about, and you tie for first place, go above your training. Yeah, it's do you get a little more lax after that because you're like, oh, I'm the man, and it's just everything worked out.
It wasn't lax. It was really like, because my coach and I kind of just had a plan for what we're going to do between events and how to kind of approach things. And so after that event, I mean, there was a little confusion after that event too, because Guy had been scored with 6 reps, but like we all knew he'd only gotten 5, and even he was saying he'd only gotten 5. So there was like a kerfuffle there, and then everyone was kind of scrambling around, and my coach was like, you're getting too carried away. We need to go work on some breathing. So I'm like, all right, cool. Let's go do that. So I just left, which is why apparently they did an interview after the first event with the people who won the event, and I was MIA because I was off somewhere with my coach. So that's what happened after that event. It was I was just like super excited, and then it was just like, all right, let's breathe and relax. And there was a lot of time between that event and yoke, so there was a lot of practice time for yoke. So in that time, I definitely lost my grounding a little bit, so to speak. I was just, again, we worked on breathing, and I was so confident going into the Arnold. Like, I'm like, okay, I want to finish first or second on keg, put myself in position. I want to be like top 3 on yoke. I wanted to win yoke. I was so confident in yoke. And then it's like, okay, so after yoke, I'll be first or second. Going to the deadlift, I'll be top 3, and then that should be enough to get me, you know, because my elbow was bugging me. I knew axle would be my worst event. So sure. I'm like, that should be enough. And then yoke rolls around, and so funny, like Pat goes first and just smokes it, right? Like puts up like 7.6 seconds or something.
Something crazy.
Yeah, something ridiculous. And I mean, in training, like I'm running sub 9s, like I think my best time was like 8.2, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'm like, all right, on the day of, like I run a 8.2, like I'm good to go. Like I'm gonna be top 3.
Sure.
And so I got out there, and I mean, I was under the bar, and man, I'm thinking of the finish line. Like I'm not thinking about what am I supposed to be doing. I'm not thinking about my breath. I'm not thinking about my brace. I'm not thinking about any of this junk. I'm thinking about I need to run sub 8 seconds. You know, it's just in my head, and just I didn't compensate for the fact that like I train on turf, and it was like a slippery concrete floor, and I just got like I flew out of the gates, and I was just going too fast for my own good and dropped it, and then it twisted, and I couldn't pick it up, and it was just, man, when I finished that thing in like 14 seconds, I'm just like, okay, so I've just trained for an entire year, and now it's for nothing. Cool.
It's a great feeling. It's crazy how quick the mood can change in strongman in a contest.
Oh, man, it was just brutal. But, I mean, now I can look at it and, like, it wasn't a physical thing. Like, I can run with this 640 yoke. It's not an issue physically. It's like I wasn't there. You know, I was thinking about the wrong stuff, and that just, man, you mess something up mentally like that, like it can cost your entire competition. And that's what it did for me. So
let Pat get in your head a little bit because he's too damn quick. It's hard to keep up. You got to just be like right behind him, you know?
Yeah. Well, and it's you know, in hindsight, it's just one of those things that I didn't really think about, where it's like, man, it's the Arnolds. Mm-hmm. Get your points on day 1. Go for the home runs on day 2.
Oh,
you
100%.
Know? Like, I didn't have that talk with myself. Like, I could have, like, just really focused, taken my time, run like a 9.5 on the yoke, and would have made day 2. Sure. You know, it's just funny in hindsight. It's like you could have just taken your worst training time on yoke, and you would have been good. So.
Yeah, I've definitely had those. I still have those talks about contests like 4 years ago.
Oh man, it's brutal. It's brutal.
But it's what makes it all worth it in the end, because you get to have those, you know, discussions and even just thoughts tormenting yourself. I don't know. I enjoy that. maybe there's
Yeah,
that's what's wrong
hey,
with
man,
us.
it's why we keep going, right?
Sure.
It's you can let things break you, or you can sit down and think about, okay, why did that happen, and like what was the problem, and how do you correct it moving forward?
Yeah.
So that was kind of that, and then I mean, it was rough after yoke because I knew I was behind the 8 ball after yoke, So I was like, you know what, I got to go out and I got to win the deadlift. Period. Got to go do it, right? I knew Pat was going to put up huge numbers, but I'm like, all right, just do it. So I put up 12, got second. That was a PR for me, so I was happy. Put myself back into the points. So I was like in points going into the axle, but again, I knew the axle was A, heavier than advertised. B, my pressing strength had gone down over my course of 4 months in training, just because my elbow, I just hadn't been able to work it enough. And so I was honestly just hoping to get out there and get a few reps, which I did. But just the way things were broken up, like I knew that Devin and Guy, who were the guys I needed to kind of beat on that, are the two best pressers in the show. And sure enough, they throw up 7 and 6, and Guy leapfrogs me, and there we are.
and here we are.
Yeah, exactly. And there we are. There I was on Sunday driving home instead of being on the stage. Good times.
Yeah. So you didn't stick around to watch the finals?
Nah, I did that last time. It was too hard.
I do not recommend that to anyone.
No, I did it once, and it was just like, no. And I mean, if I'd have been there, it would have been so painful on day 2, especially. Like, no offense to Guy, love him, but like seeing him zero that stone, I'm just, oh my god, it ripped me apart, because I trained with the stone of steel. Like, that was an event I was confident I could go in and win. So it was just terrible for me.
Sure. And I don't think that's any offense to Guy Fulton. He's everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, where if, like, let's say there was a stone on the last event and you leapfrogged him, and then he watches you press and he's like, I could hit that for 10 reps. Yeah. It's the same thing. It's just it's what's hard about a contest like the Arnold. Yeah. When there's only 4 spots. Yeah. Like that's a going from 20 something to 4 is a big cutoff, and like the top 5, like you guys are all, double digit points above everyone else. So
it's not like we were 20 points above everyone.
Well, you're still there was like, you look and you're like, oh, this is really close. Then there was from 5 to 6, I think there's it started to drop off. Not that everyone else is up there too, but.
Well, I mean, when you have an event like the axle press where only 6 guys get any points,
right?
I mean,
there's going to be a drop off.
That's going to put a huge gap in the. It's not super representative of like how the day went as a whole. Sure. Like it was closer than that, but I mean, when you have a bunch of zeros on the board like that, it's really going to skew those standings at the end.
Gotcha. Yeah. So how heavy was the axle? Was it 250? Or
I mean, it was
supposed to be 250.
255. Yeah, 255. But I think I'm pretty sure everyone kind of knows at this point that like the spacers that they put on the bar, the Bartos bar, I don't think they were taken into account, and they all weigh like a pound, so it was probably like 265 or 270. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it was, as far as I'm concerned, it was an appropriate weight for the competition, whatever it was. It was 255, 260, it doesn't matter. It was, as far as I'm concerned, it was an appropriate weight. So that axle's tough, man. Like super slippery, doesn't budge. Yeah, fun to play with, but man, tough.
Yeah, it's hard to win it. Yeah, right there, everyone kind of gets a big wake up, and I think that event, other competitors should take notice that you got to remember that Strongman's not standard. Like none of our implements. Like I think people kind of need to be reminded of that a little bit.
Yeah, and that's I mean, people complain about, oh, it's heavier than it was, or it was lighter than. I'm like, dude, everyone still did the same weight. Like as long as I know they're having competitions where like the logs were actually different types, and then to me that is BS.
Yeah,
but as long as everyone is handling this same weight, dude, it's strongman. Like,
yep.
Lift.
Well, if you want everything to be calibrated and 100%, then you should do powerlifting or weightlifting.
Yeah, 100%.
I feel like strongman's always an ish. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I treat it. I know I've showed up to events and I can tell that something's lighter than they said it was going to be, and I'm like, oh, I got a PR. Like,
Yeah.
like, oh, I hit that for 3 more reps, but in reality, it was 13 pounds less. But you
Yeah.
know, like,
Yeah.
no one
Exactly.
complains when that happens. Or I remember a couple of years ago at the Arnold, I'm pretty sure that the women's dumbbell was like everyone put up like just insane reps on it, like
Yeah.
twice their training, you know, and it's like, uh, I think that was lighter, you know, and everyone was lighter, but everyone's just like, nope, got 120 pound for 16 reps, and it's like, I don't
Yeah.
know, no one.
Yeah, well, and that's what you look at the Bartos axle this year and like how many zeros there were, like kind of across the board, like across all the weight
Sure.
classes. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's usually an indication that it was probably a bit heavier than it advertised.
And there's more than what the total weight is on the difficulty with a strongman event. Like you said, it's fixed, it's slipperier, it's a full 2 inch versus 1.9, which a lot of axles are. There's
It's the last event of the day.
yeah. There's all these variables, so that, you know,
Lots
people.
of variables.
Yeah, you just need to remember that in your own training and how you approach contests. And I think it's important to, if possible, like don't get too like if you have like multiple gyms around you, drive an hour or two, go train on their log and stuff.
Yeah,
It has a whole
yeah,
different feel. You get used to more, you know, play with different toys. You can get really used to like your home like log or circus dumbbell.
yeah. It's a problem. Yeah, it's definitely a problem, man. Like you said, every event you go to is going to have different equipment. It's not standardized, so get your hands on as many different implements as you can. Like try different logs. You know, try different axles, try different circus dumbbells. Like you have to get your hands on them to really improve your entire skill set.
Absolutely. Well, I was looking forward to you making day 2 very close, but it was also I was still looking forward to talking to you today and appreciate you coming on. If you had like we've kind of going over a couple things, but like one piece of advice for someone that's like real new to the sport, like to just take away anything you want to impart on the
Yeah,
thousands or tens of listeners, whatever it ends up being.
yeah. Like honestly, have patience. That's to me, that's the biggest thing is to have patience and to actually like always be trying to learn. You know, like it's not just strongman, but in the fitness industry in general, there's a lot of dogmatic views that this was the only way that works or this is the only way that works. Just man, take your time. You know, work your movement patterns, like listen to your body, listen to a lot of different people. Don't live in an echo chamber. You know, we're all individuals and our bodies respond differently to different things. So keep an open mind, have patience, and have fun. Like you're going to enter shows and you're not going to win. And you have to understand, like you can view failure as you suck and you're no good, or you can view it as an opportunity to get way better, you know? So enter shows, fail, lose, but talk to everyone and learn, and you're going to get better quicker.
Awesome, man. So what's next? What's up on the horizon? I know I've seen you doing a couple seminars. You know, you kind of gearing down from training for the Arnold. So what's up professionally and as far as you know, competitively?
Yeah. So, well, competitively, I've got a competition next weekend.
Oh,
Just kind
awesome.
of jumping right back in. Again, I was just on vacation for 2 weeks. I haven't really been training. It's a regional competition. I'm just going in, get my points, and kind of start the process all over again to get back to the Arnold. So I got that competition coming up. Helping run a few competitions in Ontario this year as I'm the rep for the province this year. So just trying to help grow the
Sweet.
sport here. Like you said, giving seminars. Just gave one in Barrie, Ontario. I'm going to be doing another one up there soon, and in Toronto, hopefully giving a few coming up as well. And then more professionally, working more and more with DTS Fitness Education, which is a fitness education company here in Canada. Basically, we train trainers more or less. So just working with them and helping spread good quality information to people about all the basics of movement patterns and breathing and bracing, and just trying to get good information out there. So doing that, taking on new nutrition clients and strongman clients, and starting strongman clients, and just having fun in the process, man. It's a lot of fun, just kind of helping people be better, as I say.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Yeah, and maybe get like a little breathing bracing for strongman primer. That'd be a good article you could write for. I don't know who you'd write it for, but
there we go.
I think it'd be pretty good.
Writing that down as we speak.
Yeah, maybe see that up on startingstrongman.com. That I just put Dain on the spot about it. To be
Yeah,
awesome information. So
that is actually a really good idea, and I will do that.
awesome. Awesome. Appreciate it. So people want to follow your training, get in touch with you, about, some seminars or even contests up in what you call them, your province, your area, your province. I got it right.
You
So
just have to be different, man.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, anybody, you can follow me. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, at Dain Wallis, and DainWallis.com.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time out of your day. And we'll definitely talk soon. It was fun.
Yeah, buddy. Always good to talk to you.
Do this again sometime.
For sure.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Have a good one.